Welcome to the Balanced Collective, where we love to go deep, talk big, and get real. I'm your host, Danielle Boyd, and every episode is going to bring a new concept or guest to talk all about things wellness, balance, and alignment. Our purpose here is to bridge the concepts of science and spirit to bring wellness and ease into the lives of our listeners while not taking life too seriously. We like to get down and deep into our shadow while keeping things raw, fun, and real. Thank you so much for listening. Let's get to it. Hey team, welcome to the podcast this week. My interview today is with Holly Middleton. Holly came into my life a couple months ago. She was introduced to me through a mutual friend and fellow colleague. And since then, Holly and I have totally connected. She is an anatomy and motion practitioner. And for those of you who aren't familiar with anatomy and motion, it is a rehab and movement modality that I'll let her elaborate on a little bit more as she does in the podcast, but is an incredible movement tool for just screening how the body moves as a whole, starting from the feet up. Holly owns Flow Movement Therapy, which is her own business, and she's available for one-on-one coaching here in Vancouver. And her journey has been rather unconventional, but really, really beautiful. She ties in all of her experiences that she's had in her life into what she does now. And I'm really, really excited to share this chat with you because not only do we talk a little bit philosophically and esoterically about, the connectivity of our journeys, but also about some more like functional foot rehab movement type stuff, which is also totally my jam. So this is a really, really fun interview for me, and I am really excited to share it with you. So without further ado, here's my interview with Holly Middleton of Flow Movement Therapy. Right here. Hi, Holly. Welcome to Balance Collective. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, it's great. My pleasure.
Yeah, I'm excited. So in my own effort to, kind of dissociate with what I do and who I am, I'm introducing myself a little bit differently these days. And I thought I would let you do the same. How are you introducing yourself outside of the work that you're doing? Because we'll get into that shortly.
Okay. So for me, I've worn a lot of different hats. So I started off my life as a ballerina. I did a lot of ballet as a kid and went to an elite ballet school, and that was a big part of my identity. And then I left that all behind and I went on to become a biologist, and I went on to do a bachelor's, master's, and PhD in biology. So I am also doctor, although not doctor in the health sense.
Amazing.
And I went through an attempt to have a career in conservation biology, which ended up having to end as well. And then towards the end of my PhD, I picked up dance again. I became a salsa dancer. And I was a dancer, a performer, a competitor, and a teacher of salsa for a while, and then decided through the course of having an injury and discovering my body in a healthier way, became what I am today, which is a movement coach. But besides that, I'm also born and raised in Vancouver. I am a runner now instead of a dancer, so that's my main modality for discovering my body. I'm a lifelong learner. I love to read. I read voraciously, and I have a whole bunch of different little hobbies that I've had off and on. But that's the way I am. Is I dabble in lots of things, and I have lots of passions.
Amazing. That's cool. So being a multi-potentialite, I guess they call it, or multi-passionite or whatever, is such an incredible tool because it's how great that you can wear those hats and succeed in all of them and enjoy them. And, if you're not having success in one, you can, you move over to another and dabble in this and play with that. It's really, I think it's really amazing.
Yeah.
And I think I relate to that because I'm the same way. I have many passions and enjoy all that. So I want to branch a little bit more into the work that you're doing now because, as a physio and someone who's very interested in movement myself, I've come across the work that you're doing, the anatomy and motion specifically, in my own career. And then lo and behold, the universe brought us together. And I would love to learn a little bit more about your movement coaching, a little bit more about anatomy and motion and, your technique and your approach.
Sure. So anatomy and motion is, it's a model of the ideal way that the body's supposed to move. our founder, Gary Ward, had come up with the idea that every joint needs to open and close in each of the different planes of motion throughout the human gait cycle. So with every step that you take, every joint needs to be able to have full access to its range of motion with ease. And if we don't have that, then we end up with compensations throughout our body that result in pain, injury, lack of performance, or different experiences that we might have in our bodies. And so our modality is geared towards having a laser focus at joints and being able to observe and assess what the joints are and aren't able to do. But it's also being able to tell what the joint is supposed to do, but the quality of that movement. Mm-hmm. So is it opening or closing at the right time? Is another joint doing too much of the work so that muscles not designed to do that work are picking up the slack? And that modality is so fantastic because nobody else is going to give you that kind of assessment in their practices. Mm-hmm. We're trained to zone in exactly on what your skeleton is doing and assess every single bone and every single joint in your body. And not to knock other modalities, but nobody else really does that. Mm-hmm. That's something that we specialize in, and that's something that we are trained to do, is just have a laser focus on the skeleton. And we also have our practice is different in that it takes a long time to do the assessment. It takes a while to really figure out what's going on in that the entire skeleton in one person, because every body moves completely differently. But the power of the modality is that just changing the timing or the movement of one joint can have a ripple effect throughout the entire body that can really bring profound change. And a lot of our work has to do with foot function. So about half of our training is on what the foot is supposed to do, on pronation and supination, which sometimes they get bad raps, that pronation is bad or being stuck in supination is bad. Well, it's true, but what happens is that without a proper understanding of what those two words mean and what they look like for the foot and the entire body, then we don't quite get a full grasp of the power of those two shapes and the importance of them in the body. So we're really trained to be able to zone in on creating the proper movements in the feet in order for the rest of the body to do its work.
Wow. There's so much to unpack in all of that. And my science and like biomechanics brain and neural brain are just like going crazy right now. Uh-huh. I think the big thing that jumps out to me, and having been trained in a lot of neurological, like functional neurology type approaches, PTR is the first one that comes to mind, proprioceptive deep tendon reflex. And the lineage I see between the two of these is that in PTR, we have reflexes everywhere in our body. You know, you stretch a ligament here, or you contract a muscle here, and that ripple effect is literally hitting reflexes that are to make gait more efficient. Everything in our body we are hardwired as per AIM, you know, like the hardware is meant to propel us forward, and neurologically we are meant to propel forward in gait. And I think that, using these modalities hand in hand is obviously something that I think would be incredibly beautiful. You know, you make sure that the neurology is solid and that the reflexes are making that gait more efficient. And then you look at the biomechanics of it. Is the foot pronating what it's supposed to pronate? Are the other joints responding the way they're supposed to respond? And I think it's really beautiful to see that these modalities are starting to kind of look globally and not just, the classic type model where, oh, does it move? No, move it. Oh, is it tight? Stretch it. It's, like there's so much more to it than just that. And so I think Anatomy of Motion is hitting that like out of the park, because, addressing one thing can, like you say, have that ripple effect. And it's so amazing. What are some of the big wins that you've seen clinically? Like, have you, made a tiny little adjustment here and just seen someone's world absolutely shift? Do you have any anecdotal stories to share? I mean, aside from getting, client confidentiality and all of that, but any neat stories that you have come across?
Yeah, we have some amazing things that happen with AIM. We have people so like you say, with neuroplasticity, often people have things stored in their fascia or their tissues that are, memories are in different places. And I remember being on the course and Gary telling us about this woman who you do a full history as a practitioner and you find out all the things going on in the body and trying to trace them back to their origins of what happened in your life. And they were working on this particular client, and they moved her big toe, and for the first time she got joint movement. I think it was a woman. Anyway, doesn't matter. And they said, "Oh, I totally forgot. I got ejected out of a car and landed on my head." It's like, how
biggie, right?
That? Well, that memory was stored in a locked up joint in her foot.
Wow.
And then they went and they worked on the other foot and got some other joint moving. And they said, oh yeah, that's right, I was rear-ended and went through the windshield, I forgot. It's just incredible, these things that the body stores.
Oh, completely.
And often we'll have, for example, you'll know this, and many of your listeners will know this, that the power of the psoas, the power of that muscle to make you feel grounded and to store so many emotions and experiences in your life. And I have a client who I was working on their a particular phase of the gait cycle that gets the psoas to lengthen in 3 planes. And it was the first time that this client had ever felt their psoas activate because of their injury history and their posture and their way of moving. And I got the psoas moving for the first time, and they started telling me stories about past relationships that failed that they hadn't processed and understand why.
Wow.
And they were saying, I don't know why I'm telling you this. I haven't thought of this person in decades, and I don't know why I don't know why I'm telling you this. And for me, I give my clients a very safe space for them to be able to share whatever they need, and we start that rapport right from the very first moment I meet them. And I told them that it's okay, you can tell me whatever you need to say. And you can let go of whatever you need to say. And they were not embarrassed, but just surprised that that was what came up for them, and that they couldn't let go of those thoughts, that they just had to articulate those things. But I mean, we have so many successes that other practitioners just fail to be able to help with, like plantar fasciitis. If we just allow the bones in the feet to move, that will be alleviated almost right away. And people go for years in pain and, trying different things to try to alleviate that. And it's just a sense of moving the joints again and allowing the tissues to relax. And that's a really quick one that's easy to resolve. And one that I've had that I quite like is a woman came in and she had plateaued on her squat weight in the gym. And she was frustrated that months had gone by and nothing had changed. And she'd done things in the gym hoping that those things would help her improve that squat weight, and was unable to do so. And she came in and I changed the timing in her knee mechanics when she bent her knee, and she went home and doubled her squat weight.
Doubled.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then she took a workshop with me. We discovered her pelvis wasn't quite moving properly, and she came in to see me again, and we got her pelvis moving, and then her squat weight went up again.
Wow.
So it's all based on mechanics. So it's not necessarily, this muscle isn't strong enough, or, whatever the gym-based thing that you need. It's really that the timing of the firing of those muscles was off, and she had it in her. She just didn't have the timing right.
Amazing. It's so true. Like, it's not necessarily about how strong that muscle is. It's, if the mechanics are poor, the brain's not going to find that muscle. It's just disconnected. And so if you can get things moving and get the mechanics correct so that the brain can find it in that timing and in that sequence, that's ultimately what matters. You can have a muscle that's incredibly strong, but if it's not firing with the right sequence, timing, or connectivity, it's not going to do its job.
That's right. That's why I love working with these other modalities like NKT and PTR, because those practitioners set up the nervous system and the muscles ready to do my job, and then I come in and get the joints moving. And it's really a cool synergy, because I can only do so much. And I've had the same thing with one of my clients where I can only do so much for her nervous system, and all her joints move. She has access to everything, but her nervous system isn't ready. That's when I refer out to somebody who can help get the nervous system doing what it's supposed to do.
Amazing.
And then my job is easier.
Yeah, exactly. And then our job is easier as well, because, we get the nervous system primed. And to be completely honest, in my practice, I'm more of a manual therapist. I don't have as good of a movement background. And so that's why I love to refer out and say, okay, nervous system is firing. Great. Muscles are, timing is good, but now let's get it moving. Let's get you feeling into that. I love working with movement therapists, and it's such a beautiful piece of it, because, there's only so much you can do with nervous system if someone's not moving and actually using that new sequence, that new connectivity, that new, neural system pathway that wasn't previously there. I love that. You talked a lot about the trauma in the tissue, and I would love to go and unpack that a little bit more, because I think that is such a a huge concept, and the mind body connection on top of that. Neurologically, we in PTR, oftentimes thinking about a sore area will actually physically pair with a local pain receptor. So for example, if you've had a knee surgery, thinking about your knee can produce a sharp pain response in the knee itself. And so if you can get the knee moving or get the mechanics of that better, and then that might actually release that emotional component of it. What are your thoughts on, trauma in the tissue, and what are kind of your experiences with that?
So the concept in AIM, anatomy and motion, is that the movements that we have are a result of the compensations our body has come up with, or our nervous system has come up with, in order to keep you safe. Mm-hmm. And everything that's happened to you, your injuries, your habitual patterns, the way you sit, the way you've learned how to move from observing other people, your emotions, your experiences, everything makes up you and makes you unique to who you are. Mm-hmm. And all of those experiences mean that we move in a certain way. And sometimes we move in a certain way because it's safe, because when we were injured, when I bent my knee, that hurt. And so I found a way around it, a workaround. And so what happens is now there's a concept in your nervous system that there's a safe way to move and there's an unsafe way to move. And even if it was decades ago when it hurt to bend your knee, you still have that same patterning in your body of moving the way that it was safe at the time that whatever the way you chose to move that didn't hurt. Mm-hmm. That will always be your pattern of moving that joint, even decades after that injury. And the nervous system does that because if it's unsafe, I'm not going to move there. And it finds the best possible, most efficient way that's different from the way it was moving before. But what happens is that sense of unsafe is locked in there. And once that tissue is healed and everything's good to go, your nervous system has forgotten that original way of moving. And what anatomy and motion does is it uses a very controlled setting to be able to put that original movement back and to prove to your nervous system it is safe again. Because your nervous system only knows, last time we did that hurt, don't do it. And it will protect and protect and protect you from doing the thing that hurt. Because it's smart. It's clever.
Oh, totally.
It's very clever. And it's going to stop you from doing that thing that hurt. So with anatomy and motion, what we do is in a very controlled, safe environment with a lot of feedback from the client and a lot of trust and an understanding that if anything feels wrong, we're going to stop. But you need to tell me because I don't know what you're feeling. Mm-hmm. We're going to use the model to figure out what works for you. And we're going to move into this space that you haven't moved into in probably a long time. But we're going to show your body that, it's actually okay. But we're going to do that slowly at the pace that you're ready for. And we're going to show your body that that space is safe again. And that's the beauty of it, is that, your body will resist right away. It'll be, no, we can't go there. Last time we did that hurt. And it has this response of no. Mm-hmm. And we show it that it's cool. You can do that. You can move there and you're okay. And so that's what anatomy and motion is doing, is reminding the body of what is already factory installed. You already have that knowledge in your body of the ideal way to move. We just have to remind you, because the viruses have been in there. The computer viruses in the program are in there to prevent you from doing that. And so we remind you of what you already know.
It's so interesting to me. It kind of parallels even like behavioral patterning, like you have a behavior that you picked up as a child that, you felt inadequate for. And so then you develop these patternings and, they've gotten you to where they are, but they no longer serve you. And it's the same thing physically. Yeah. You've had an injury and a trauma and you moved in a certain way to adapt and accommodate that. But now the tissue's healed so that you can release the nervous system pattern because it's no longer serving you anymore. And it's really interesting to me. I see so many parallels in terms of behavioral patterning and movement patterning. And I think that they blend together so beautifully. And when we move out of fear and when we behave in our lives out of fear, then that's not necessarily conducive to expansion moving forward, or, even physically moving forward or gait and efficiency. So I just a neat thing that I wanted to kind of parallel there.
Well, I think there's another funny parallel that maybe you don't realize, is that my PhD is on fear and it's on movement of animals. And so as you say, movement and behavior are the same. Well, they are. Movement is behavior. And movement is the behavior of you as an animal responding to your environment. And that's essentially what my PhD is about, is how animals move in response to fear. And now I've become an AIM practitioner, and I teach people to move in response to fear. So it's kind of funny that it's all the same. Life has these funny synergies where it's all the same. So yeah,
that's so interesting. Like how neat that it all kind of came full circle for you. Can you expand a little bit about on some of your research in your PhD?
Sure. I was looking at from a conservation biology perspective, we're interested in building or designing places for animals to live that are nature reserves. And we want to have spaces that are ideal for the types of things that those species need. So the right type of food, but also having enough space for all of them to live there and to have it safe for them to want to live there. So sometimes we'll build a reserve and say, oh, it's great, look at all the habitat, that's fantastic. But there's a highway through it, or there's, it's full of their predators and it's full of dangerous things. So we can look at it and say, oh, lots of habitat. But then the animal goes, I don't want to live there. I'm going to die. Or I'm going to be so freaked out constantly that it's not worth it. So my work was looking at how do we structure our environments for species to make it feel safe for them so that they want to actually spend their time there.
Wow. Very interesting. And again, paralleling, human environment and just I think it's such a beautiful analogy. And, we often live in situations that are maybe not ideal, that are creating illness or sickness or fear or patterning or whatever you want to call it. And so, ultimately we have the same nervous system. And so when we behave out of these patterns and these fears and these unideal environments, they can absolutely manifest in different ways.
Yeah. The only difference is that we can rationalize our way out of them.
Yeah.
Animals just respond. Animals just respond cleanly to what's there, whereas we can rationalize ourselves into fears or out of them.
Wow.
Out of them.
Very interesting. Wow, that ties everything all together. Yeah. I want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to ask you a little bit. Obviously your journey is rather unconventional to finding movement. Being a dancer, maybe not so, but having done the PhD in biology and in conservation, and then back to dance, and then back to where you are. What is a huge, or maybe a larger lesson that you've kind of picked up along your journey? What's kind of a big life lesson or life learning that's come to you through all this?
I think for me, it's realizing what we just spoke about, is that everything is connected, and that just because I've worn a bunch of different hats in my life doesn't mean that I've failed at one thing or failed at something else. Mm-hmm. That the fact that I've had the opportunity to explore all of these things that I'm passionate about and that I may be good at means that I'm able to take from each of those different opportunities and experiences and see that they have benefit in their own right, and that putting them all together, that I can build the life that I have today. So it's not that, oh, I failed at being a dancer or I failed at being a biologist. All of those things come together in order for me to be the person that I am today. And there isn't really anybody out there who can give me advice on what to do. I've found that people will say, oh, you should do this, you should do that. And I've found that that there's a lot of people that will throw advice at me on what they think I should do with my life. And I've followed those and they haven't worked. So I find that I have to sort of be going at the beat of my own drum and find my own circle of people around me that are going down the same path that I am. So the multi-potentialites, the really interesting people that have done a lot of things with their lives, who have worked this out in their own way, and finding that if I want to do things a little bit differently than other people, then I have to find those different people that are also following that same type of path. And it can be people from all different walks of life, but for me, it's people that understand that there's different ways of doing things, and there's out of the box thinking is really valuable. And that's becoming a really important thing nowadays, that we are jack of all trades, that we have to do a bunch of things in order to survive in an expensive city or a world that's changing, to having less loyalty from employers and all those sorts of things. That means that we have to be more adaptable to everything. Wow. So for me, it's really about realizing that it will all work itself out, that whatever it is that you want to do, if you have the determination and the talent, not the talent necessarily, not at all, but if it's something you really want to do, it'll work itself out.
Exactly. Trusting yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
And connecting to your higher self, if you want to get more spiritual about it. But I really like that, sometimes, yeah, the unsolicited advice is not always the most helpful thing. And, people think that they're being helpful and they're coming at you for, they're coming at you with love or whatever they perceive that to be. But ultimately really connecting to our higher self and really listening to what we truly want and sitting with that, sitting in stillness, sitting in slowness, and really just asking yourself, what is that? I love that you mentioned surrounding yourself with those types of people as well, because what do they say? We are the summary of the 5 people we spend the most time with, or whatever that is. And so it is very true. Yeah. Surrounding yourself with people who are doing that and who are expanders for you, who are, maybe a couple steps ahead of you in whichever realm you're trying to expand into. And I think that that's really huge. I'm trying to do the same thing for myself. So thank you for that. Cause I think that's huge. That's a huge lesson for people who can take away that with.
Yeah. Well, it's realizing you're not alone and that other people have walked this path, and you may feel like you're struggling, but you're not alone. And I love seeing people's posts about the early days, their struggle, the things they went through, because you think everyone's killing it and they're not. It's like, oh, that really successful person. Oh, they were just like me. Okay. So everything's good.
Yeah. And it's so true. I mean, like social media, we can unpack that for hours, but it's the highlight reel. And so when we're only seeing people who are, killing it, or, are super, super successful in this, or, just the curated life, it's not real. And I'm on the same page with that. I relate way more to the vulnerable posts, to the posts that are encouraging and, sharing stories and that just allow you to connect with someone on a deeper level and share their struggle or share their vulnerabilities. I think that that's absolutely huge. Mm-hmm. It's a huge one. So speaking of social media, where can people find you online?
I'm on Instagram, so Flow Movement Therapy. I really like to post frequently there. My posts are mostly about things I'm thinking about right now. So different concepts that I've learned about. A lot of it's to do with movement coaching and different concepts around. Mostly, my work has transitioned a bit into talking more to practitioners on how to work around a certain thought pattern or different concepts like that. So Instagram's where I put most of my work. I'm also on Facebook, so at Flow Movement Therapy has their own business page, so you'll be able to find my work there. And I don't think I really use other social media. I think that's my main places.
Amazing. I love what you're doing on social media. I think some of your posts are so interesting because they're sharing nuggets of wisdom, really, and things that you've picked up. And I love those kinds of posts. Where did the shift come from posting, more to clients to practitioners? When did that shift happen, and what kind of inspired that?
Well, that was more of a business approach. So understanding that my ideal clients don't really hang out on Instagram, but the people that I connect with on Instagram are colleagues. And that's what I'm getting with the feedback is colleagues will message me or comment on things and say, we love your content. Or if I stop posting for a while, are you okay? So they really are reading it. So I'm realizing that the value of the little nuggets of things that I'm thinking about is for people that are like me rather than clients. So I've changed my posting to reflect who is reading it. It's really just about who the readership is rather than thinking. So I was thinking, my earlier posts are thinking in terms of clients and trying to figure out what is this AIM thing anyway? What is she all about? Trying to just get some understanding. And now I realize that my readership is really other clients or other practitioners.
Amazing. And that's all that's going to do is just expand your referral network even more, which is great. Cause I know there's a few other AIM practitioners in the city, but there's not a ton. So so having that referral network is huge. So I think that's really cool what you've done. And so you're getting a lot of inspiration, obviously, from things that you're reading, things that you're learning. What in particular are some of your favorite resources for, learning about movement, learning about this type of stuff that you're doing?
A lot of it is, I like to listen to podcasts of different biomechanists and barefoot nerds and different people that are thinking differently about movement. And I read voraciously, so I probably read about 3 or 4 books a week, not cover to cover, but just going through their content and taking good nuggets of information from them. And I also find that I learn a lot from other practitioners. So we have study groups that sometimes I Skype into them, sometimes I attend them. And just reading a lot of the content of other practitioners and understanding how they do their work. So it's AIM practitioners, but other practitioners of many different kinds, and seeing their perspective and how they approach things. And we have an AIM forum on Facebook that's only for practitioners, and people post in there about their troubleshooting and their questions all the time. And I'm inspired by their troubleshooting, engineering, and trying to figure things out on their own. But a lot of, for me to think outside the box all the time with trying to find a solution for a client, it's just my mechanical and logical deductive brain, I guess, it kicks in and figures things out. So I do things all the time. Like, I'm trying to switch up the way I move and the way I think. So I've learned how to solve the Rubik's Cube, and I've solved 4 different types of Rubik's Cubes. So it's just being able to think about mechanics in different ways, and just things like that, just thinking in different modalities and thinking in different ways, that helps me be creative when I'm in session. But also, I mean, there's so many places to learn things that it can be endless, and it could be overwhelming. There's so many places to learn from. So books are great. Podcasts are great to think about, to get your head into different ways of thinking about certain things. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of it is other practitioners and their work, being inspired by, I never really thought of it that way.
Yeah, very cool. We're very lucky as well in the NKT and PTR communities. We have the same types of forums, and I spend, so much time on them. You get a case that comes in and it's something you haven't seen before. And so you hop on the forum on Facebook and you search through it and you see what other people have done. And a lot of it is just troubleshooting. And the really neat thing is, we're kind of the on the ground, like boots on the ground for these modalities. There's not really like any textbooks or evidence or this kind of stuff.
Oh.
Like, we are the ones creating that evidence. And so it's really neat. Like, we are on the periphery of pushing the boundaries of what's possible, because these modalities are new, they're unique, and they're cutting edge. And we really are the ones that are delivering them to the people and collecting the data and collecting the anecdotes. Mm-hmm. It's really, really powerful. Yeah. If someone listening here was wanting to, learn a little bit more about how they can move better, or, just wanted to get started on giving their feet a little bit more love, what would you suggest to them?
So most of us, we don't give what our feet and our bodies crave. We don't give it to them in every single day. So what happens is, our environment is designed for efficiency and not having to move very much. Mm-hmm. So 2 things that I would recommend. The first one is, give your body new types of movement all the time. So you probably have you drive your car, you walk on a flat sidewalk and flat floors, and you sit in a certain chair and you move in certain ways all the time. But what your body is designed for is novelty and different ways of moving. And so what I would recommend is trying out moving in new ways. I don't know if it's a dance class or if it's, swinging from trees or whatever it is. Just try to find new ways of moving and finding new ways of exploring the range of motion in your body. And so that's for your whole body. So for me, it's, learning the Rubik's Cube is a new way of moving my fingers. Mm-hmm. And learning, if I go for a run and then I hang off of the monkey bars at the end of it, that's a new experience for my shoulders. And for your feet, what I would recommend is giving them new experiences, because most of the time we're in shoes or we're on flat floors and we never really have to challenge the joints in our feet. And as I mentioned earlier, your feet really have a huge impact on the rest of your body. If your feet aren't moving well, the rest of your body isn't moving well. And our feet tend to get stuck into one shape. So we never have to challenge them, because we give them pretty much a monoculture all day long. All they ever know is one shape, because they don't ever have to make any other shapes. Mm-hmm. So your body is craving many, many different shapes in your feet and your whole body. One thing that you can do with your feet is, if you have a really small ball, you can put this underneath your foot, and instead of massaging the whole foot, what I would recommend is putting it under one spot and then putting all your weight into it, and then moving it a half an inch away and putting all your weight into it, and moving it a half an inch again and putting all your weight into it, kind of like ironing out the bottom of your foot. Mm-hmm. And every time you put your weight into your foot, relax, so you're creating your foot around the shape of the ball. And what this is doing is opening and closing every possible joint in all planes of motion throughout your foot. And it's going to be quite tender to do that. So you want to be careful how much pressure you put into it. But we want to give your foot that experience of novelty in all of the joints that it doesn't usually get. And what I do is I have some river rocks that are they're not round, they're sort of flat and long and smooth. And when I'm working, sometimes I'm sitting on the floor most of the time, but if I'm standing, I will put those under my feet and I'll do the same thing I just mentioned. So I'll move them around a little bit and I'll shift my weight on them to give your feet experiences while you're standing up of different shapes that they would never get the chance to do while you are sitting or you're in your shoes. So just giving your feet an experience that they're not used to having. And your body craves that. Your body really wants that. And that will challenge all of the muscles throughout your body, all of your joints to manage your mass around these shapes that your feet are creating. And that's really what we're designed to do every single step of every single day.
Wow. New and novel.
Yeah, exactly.
New and novel. And it's very interesting. I mean, looping back to our conversation about fear, you know, the brain kind of fears the unknown, but really that's what our bodies are craving, is different and novel and new.
Yeah. And the resilience to be able to deal with that. So how frequently do I have a client who comes in and go, I stepped off a curb and I rolled my ankle. And I'm like, wait, you stepped off a predictable height curve onto a predictable floor, like flat sidewalk, and you rolled your ankle. Like, I mean, I'm not laughing at them, but I'm thinking you just used the two most predictable things in our lives and you failed to accomplish it, right? That your body is not set up to deal with even the most predictable things. Right. So we want resilience in your body so that it can deal with anything that happens around it. For example, I was in a performance and in salsa, we dance in very high heels.
Right.
And I was giving everything in my performance and I almost rolled my ankle, which I never do. I'm not prone to rolling my ankle. But I felt my ankle rolling and it immediately went back to its neutral position because I had worked with anatomy and motion for long enough that my body knew its extremes and it knew how to come out of those safely. Wow. And it was reflex. It wasn't me realizing it. I realized it after it happened. But it was my body knowing how to be resilient and come out of a position that puts it into vulnerability. And it's that resilience that we've lost in our day-to-day lives because everything's predictable. Your coffee is precisely this hot. Your floor is precisely this level. And as soon as, you know, there's a slight lip in the floor, you trip over it because your body is expecting a very predictable environment. But our body has not learned how to be itself, which is to be able to adapt to everything.
Wow. That's really insightful. I think that's a really just powerful explanation you gave. I think that's really cool. What are your thoughts on like footwear and being barefoot and, you know, what type of footwear would you recommend people wear?
So there's two camps here. I listen a lot to people who are barefoot enthusiasts and barefoot shoe running CEOs and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people say, oh, well, you know, our feet today are shoe shaped. That our shoes are not shaped for our feet. Our feet have adapted to become shaped like our shoes. Mm-hmm. So that's with a raised heel, and pretty much every shoe on the market has a raised heel. It's a few millimeters. A narrow toe box that's squishing your toes together, yeah, and a stiff insole. And so all of those things are preventing your feet from creating the shapes they need to create. And the problem with that is that, just as I mentioned, you have no resilience in your feet. So a lot of people will say, oh, you shouldn't be wearing those restrictive shoes or the stilettos or the rock climbing shoes or the things that are really restricting your feet. We should transition out of those and you should be barefoot as much as you can and blah, 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 blah. Well, you know, that's all well and good, but realistically, we have lives. You want to wear a nice pair of shoes when you go out for dinner. Maybe you have to for your job. Maybe you have to be in heels. Maybe you're a soccer player, you have to be in cleats for hours and hours on end. It's not realistic to tell people not to wear these sorts of shoes that limit your joint actions and prevent your feet from doing what they're meant to do. So my recommendation is to be aware of what your feet need to do in order to feel good and how to restore those, restore that movement. And then wear the shoes that you want to wear, but be able to restore that motion afterwards. It was kind of like a diet. If you told someone you can only eat lettuce and tomatoes and never anything else, and you go binge on the weekend because you can't keep it up. Well, it's not realistic, is it? Yeah. It's the same thing with our shoes and with our feet. that if you know what keeps you healthy and you can restore that, then go and have fun wearing your stilettos and go, do whatever it is you do. But have an awareness of what your happy, healthy feet feel like and how to restore that. And then find, and as Gary Ward says, find shoes that you can dominate, not shoes that dominate you. So, I like that. Yeah. So find shoes that you can get all of the movements and things that you need in your feet within those shoes, instead of the shoes stopping you from being able to move. And that can be whatever shoe it can be. It can be any of these, really popular brands, or it can be one of these minimal shoes. It doesn't matter, just as long as you can dominate the shoes.
I like that. I really like that, actually. And it's so funny. I mean, we see clients come in all the time and they get foot pain. And so instead of taking their shoes off or, giving more mobility to their foot, they just add more rigidity to it by adding an orthotic or an insole or something like that. And it kind of just makes me chuckle, because your foot stiffens up when it is, contained in this box, and then you go and you stiffen up more and contain it even more just to prevent it from moving even more. And it just is quite the conundrum. But I really like that. Like, dominate the shoe. If you can move in it, if you feel really good in it, and then you can come home and you can, undo all the stiffness that came with that. I think that's, live your life, do your thing. Yeah. That's really cool. So thank you so much for doing this. Is there anything else that you would want to give anyone, like any movement advice or anything else, before I ask you the last question?
I think that for our day-to-day life, the best thing that you could possibly do to have good long-term health with your movement is just to move more. What we find is that we get these prescriptions from personal trainers and from the government that say 150 hours of moderate exercise a week and all these sorts of things. And people get very caught up in their Fitbit says I must have 10,000 steps and all of these sorts of things of measuring what people tell me is good for my health. When in fact, what we find is that what is good for your health is moving a lot more often than you are. And people find that fitting in exercise is such an onerous task. It's like, oh, another thing I have to do. But what we really want is people to realize that going for a run or killing it in the gym or doing some crazy aerobic, stressful activity isn't necessary for health. That's not what that's not what exercise is. There's a difference between exercise and movement. And the important thing is to realize that movement is what's required. So moving in any way is still exercise. I think there's a real disconnect in what the human body needs in order to be healthy and what we're told that we're supposed to do. And most people don't want to do the thing they're supposed to do, and so they don't. But instead, if we can show them that moving, like cooking dinner, walking to the grocery store, things that aren't hard, but they're movement. And that's what your body needs every day, is just to be moving around. So we have essentially outsourced movement in our lives. People bring us food, people wash our clothes, people do all the things that we do to move to keep you healthy, that your body needs, that is still exercise, but is very low impact exercise. We've given those tasks to other people. So there's something very simple in the summer. Go for a picnic. Wow. Take your food, go sit on the ground on a blanket and enjoy the company of somebody else, or go pick berries. Picking berries is really fun. And you go and go with some friends, and you have to reach and lift and carry and use your hands in different ways and learn a new skill. I mean, your body craves that kind of stuff, and it's fun. Picking strawberries, you have to squat too. Yeah. So it's just some different experiences that your body can do. And summer is here, and that's a perfect opportunity. A picnic means sitting on the ground is taking on new postures. Yeah. Getting your hips and your back willing to sit on the ground and sit on a blanket, and, spreading cheese on something and, moving around and making your food instead of the takeout and sitting on a chair or something like that. Just I really like that. Simple things that get you moving.
I love that. And I'm guilty of this as well. And for me, when I think of, I have to get my movement in, I have to raise my heart rate, I have to sweat, I have to, and that's, I think our mindset is it doesn't count as movement or as exercise if I'm not sweaty, if I haven't raised my heart rate to, 80% or haven't hit my 75% 1 rep max or whatever it is. Movement really is just like getting from A to B creatively, or, creating this task or doing something that's not stagnant for an hour at a time.
Mm-hmm. Put on some music and do your dusting.
Right?
You'll dance around the house for 5 minutes. That's something.
It's perfect, and it's easy, and it's not, this constructed class or anything. It's just getting creative. Mm-hmm. Our body craves creativity and movement.
It does.
So the last question I have for you, and I ask this to everyone that I have on the show, is what is your definition of balance?
My definition of balance. As a business owner and a new business owner, that's tough because I don't know. Right now, my life is everything to do with my business. Right. And so for me, it's realizing that, just like my explanation of movement, is that we need to have some balance in our lives to do with movement. And so for me, realizing that summer is the best time to get outside and to do things, I realized that for me, being in nature is something that brings me some more balance into my life, because it allows me to shut off and just enjoy the sensations of being in nature. So being able to go for a walk, and for me, I studied birds. And so to be able to go in the forest and listen to the birds and remember all the memories of childhood of learning these birds and what those things all mean to me, and the anecdotes of all the things that I had as a kid, learning all of these different things to do with birds and ecology, and the smells and the sights and all of that goes together, just takes me out of the headspace of being a business owner and all the to-do list and things that I should be doing and the things I shouldn't be doing. So just having a little bit of time every week to go and do that. And sometimes that's just my run. I go for a run and I don't, I don't encounter anybody else. I just get outside and I can just get away from the things that I think I should be doing, and to do that. And that balance will come with time. Right now, my focus is building my business and getting everything off the ground, but that balance will hopefully level itself out a little bit more.
Amazing. So it's just finding moments of stillness, finding moments of, calm and nature, and balancing that with everything else that you're trying to balance right now. I love it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this, Holly. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Are very insightful, and I actually would love to do a session with you. So we'll have to organize a trade or something like that.
Fantastic. Well, you know where to find me.
Exactly. Amazing. Thank you so much. Have an awesome day, and we will chat soon. Thanks again.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you found this episode as expansive as I did. If you enjoyed listening, please like, subscribe, and review. It means so much to us. If you would like to learn more about The Balanced Collective and our offerings, please visit www.thebalancedcollective.com or hit us up on Instagram @thebalancedcollective. Thank you so much, and please keep spreading your light.